You're listening to the Perth Property Show, Australia's only weekly property podcast by West Australian experts for West Australian listeners. Catch your latest episode every Monday at 7 a.m.
Good morning, everyone. Welcome to the Perth Property Show. My name's Trent Fleskens, your host. As always, this week we're having a conversation in the regions, a really small town, to be frank, but there's a story behind it that I wanted to cover today and have a conversation about what's going on in the regional land space that isn't just in the southwest. It's a conversation I want to have with Craig Hyne from Country Values in Gingin. It also covers places like Bindoon, Guilderton, Lancelin, and so there's a little bit of context to give there. But a bit of an update on what's going on in the town of Gingin that only has just over 800 people in it, I think is a great little yardstick for where things are at, even in the small towns with a small level of supply, a relatively small amount of demand generally, and how things have changed over the last couple of years. Craig, thanks so much for coming in.
Thanks, Trent. It's great to be here.
Tell us a bit of, if you can, bit of a story about Gingin. What's going on there? Why do people live there, and why would I want to go there for a day trip?
I've lived there most of my life, and it's a very small regional town. It's only about an hour out of the Perth CBD, so it's on the outskirts of Perth, but it's always been a small little satellite town. Hadn't changed much for many years, but since COVID, there's been quite a few changes in our little town, and yeah, it's quite a big change for the little town.
Why was Gingin set up in the first place? What's the history of it?
It was really a farming town originally, and it was one of the earliest settled towns actually in WA. Really good water supply there, good agricultural land. There's a brook, the Gingin Brook flows right through the middle of the town, so it made sense for a new settlement. And it's always been an agricultural town. In recent years, there's been more horticulture in the area. It's probably one of the food bowls of WA now.
What sort of food's coming out of there?
A lot of fresh produce, lettuce, olives, oranges, avocados, just about every type of fruit and vegetables you can think of. Gingin's got it.
I heard the Galati family's got some potatoes up there.
Yeah, they do. There's the Tanners and the Galatis, and a few of the big Italian families have got quite a big holding in the Gingin area. A lot of good groundwater between the town and the coast, towards Lancelin as well. Yeah, very good horticultural country. Due
west, we've got Guilderton.
Yep.
Most of us West Australians or Perthians would have been there for a holiday with the parents when we were kids and still going up there today. Lovely little town. Is there any connect there between people in Gingin and people in Guilderton? Is it the holiday home space? If you're a local Gingin farmer, do you have a holiday home in Lancelin or Guilderton?
Guilderton was pretty much established by Gingin farmers originally. A lot of the old asbestos houses were built by the old farmers, and I've heard stories of them sharing a bore and a windmill and a generator, sharing between 4 or 5 different houses back when it was all just dirt tracks. But nowadays, a lot more people from Perth that own holiday homes there, and it's a really nice little town, get away from the metro area.
Back to Gingin, what sort of housing products do we have available there? Has anything new been built in the last 50 years before the recent land developments?
Yeah, really nothing, to be honest with you. There was a couple of projects probably 20 or 30 years ago that were developed around the town, but not much in the last sort of 10 years or so. And then there's a project that we've just completed now, Brookview Estate, which was 107 residential lots plus a commercial area that's been developed right near the town centre, and that's really changing the face of the town.
So it's mainly brick and tile or timber?
Mostly brick and tile. The original houses back in the 60s and 70s were a lot of brick and tile. Prior to that was a lot of asbestos homes, and prior to that was the mud brick houses back in the 30s and 40s, and there's a few of them that still exist today. It's a real variety, but mostly big blocks. They're 2,000 to 4,000 square metre blocks, the original lots. More recently we've had 1,000 square metre blocks, but only recently.
What am I paying for a house up there? Obviously, I assume like a lot of places in the regions, and certainly in Perth, we've seen escalations of upwards of 100% in the last 5 years. What's that story been for Gingin? Where was it at pre-COVID, and where's that median today for your normal median house?
The 12-month median at the moment is about 630,000. Today, if you wanted to buy a house in Gingin, you probably won't get a house for 630,000. They're mostly above that. Even the cheaper end is just the way the market's moved in the last 12 months. Prior to COVID, you could pick up a pretty good house for $450 for a 3 or 4 bedroom house on a good sized block.
Let's talk about this new land estate that's come in. It's why I wanted to get you in today because, again, it's a bit of a yardstick for what's going on. You've got a population of just over 800 people, and then you're going through 107 residential lots in there, 2 people per house on average in WA. It's 214 people. You've increased the population by 20% by if everyone was to build on those blocks. When did that land development start?
So it's an interesting story. That site was actually on the market for about 3 years before it even sold. And
how big is it?
It's about 20 odd hectares, but right near the centre of town. So right across the street from all the shops and the main commercial centre of town. So within walking distance to everything, close to the park, close to the brook. And it was just sitting there as farmland for a long time. Like I say, it was on the market for 2 or 3 years. And when the developers bought it, I think they timed it perfectly because it was just as the market was starting to kick post-COVID. And prior to that, a block of land in Gingin was, for a 1,000 square metre block, was 100 to 120 grand. So it was really not feasible for developers to even look at development sites in Gingin and some of these, like Bindoon and some of these other small towns as well.
So developable land.
Developers
with intent, but just not a price point that buyers are willing to pay or having to pay to make it worthwhile. So it just sits there.
That's right. It just didn't stack up for the developers with the development costs. So when we hit the market with these, we started at minimum point was 149,000, which was quite a dramatic shift from where the previous sales had been.
So it was already aspirational for a quarter acre block.
Yeah. And for most people, $149,000 now seems like a pittance. And
for a lot of Perth people, you'd think I'm getting about 50 square metres for that.
That's right, yeah. And they're big blocks. They're like 1,000 to 2,000 square metres. But for a little town like Gingin that hadn't changed much for a long time, it took a bit to swallow. And once the first few blocks started to sell, then it started to snowball. And the price, each stage that we developed, the prices went up to the point where the last stage we were selling quarter acre blocks for about 225,000.
So what was the date of the first sale?
The very first sale was late 2023.
And we're in early 2026 now, so we're talking about a 2.5 year time frame to get rid of most of the 107 blocks.
Yeah. So the first few months, probably the first 6 months, it was very slow to get going. We probably only sold a handful of blocks. That was pre-sale, so it wasn't developed. You were just looking at a paddock. But then once the first stage, we started getting sales in that first stage, and people started to accept that was the new price point. Obviously, a lot of those buyers were coming from the metro area where they could see the value. Then it started to snowball from there.
Yeah, and I think that's the reality even in Perth, is that despite the FOMO, most buyers of house and land packages who are somewhat sophisticated want to drive out there, see where their patch is going to be and see that there are tractors out there doing some work rather than some spruiker selling the idea of something that hasn't even got off the ground yet. It's the same with apartments.
That's right, yeah. It's hard to picture it in your mind what you're actually buying until you see it.
And 150,000 to 225,000 is not a small percentage increase at all. And when you add in the cost to build on a quarter acre block, I'm assuming given obviously the space in that quarter acre, you can build some fairly efficient square homes, but there wouldn't be a builder in Gingin who can build 107 homes. So where are these builders coming from?
There is one builder that's got a pretty good reputation and has been doing quite a few homes locally, but mostly they're coming from Perth. But they are the Plunkets and the rural building companies and those that are used to building in regional areas. A lot of the metro builders still aren't. I guess they're busy enough in Perth too.
Well, and they just don't have a trade base either.
That's right.
A builder is only as good as their tradies and their subbies, and if their subbies don't live around Gingin, they're not driving out there to do the work when they could be doing it a bit closer to home.
That's right.
And so I think that's probably going to be your biggest challenge, is how long is it going to take to see 107 homes come out? Any idea, talking to the buyers of these blocks, what it's costing to build that family home up there?
Even a modular home nowadays is probably $450 for
at least.
Yeah, for a basic modular home. Yeah, you're looking probably between that and $650.
Which it's starting to get up there when it comes to prices in Gingin in the first place.
Yeah.
You pay $225 plus your $650. Plus your fees, you're in the nines, but I guess it's the only new product available in the area if that's what you're after.
That's right. And there's not a lot of established houses for sale. It is a small town, and we're finding that at any one point in time there might be 1 or 2 houses on the market established. Wow. So we're getting really good prices for those. There was one property that we resold twice in 18 months. I think it was about a 35 to 40% increase in value in 18 months on that one house with no change to it. So that was on a half-acre block, 4x2, fairly modern home, sold for over 900 in the end.
So who's buying in? When you think about the 107 people who have bought into Gingin, how can you characterise them if you could put them in a pie graph? What would be the stereotypes, the typologies that you could round all these people up in?
It is a real variety. We're getting a few first-time buyers, not as many as I would have expected. We're getting downsizers, a lot of downsizers.
From Gingin or from elsewhere?
No, mostly from the metro area.
So a tree change?
Yeah. People they've got a lot of equity in their home in Perth. They can sell up from there. They can buy a property with a bit more space. Some of them are building only 3-bedroom houses because they don't necessarily need a big house, but they're happy to have a big garden and cash out a bit of the equity for their retirement and enjoy their life.
Any investors been swooping in?
Yeah, there have been a lot of investors just buying blocks just speculatively. Obviously looking at what's happening in places like Bullsbrook and Ellenbrook and the other northern suburbs of Perth. You look at even Two Rocks, 300 square metre block for $350,000 and that sort of thing. They're bigger blocks for much better value. So I think people are seeing that from a speculation point of view and thinking we can buy a cheap block and sit on it or even build a house and rent it out.
Are they Perth people or are they East Coasters with a buyer's agent?
Very few East Coasters. I think we've had a few East Coast people looking at them, but really I think being just that little bit out of the metro area, it's probably not quite there as far as the growth prospects compared to some. Obviously your inner suburbs of Perth have got your pretty good long-term growth potential, so that'll always appeal to East Coasters, but more so people from the metro area. And it is more lifestyle choice that people are buying for.
And I guess that is what Gingin's key offering is, right? It's competitive advantages. It's a quiet town out of the way, but not too far away to be inconvenient.
We get a lot of FIFO workers as well that are buying there because it's only 45 minutes or so from the airport. Since Tonkin Highway was built, what was that? I think it was about 2000, just after COVID, just in COVID when the Tonkin Highway was finished. So that's made it a lot easier to get to the airport and to a lot of the areas in Perth. So we've seen just that accessibility, but still being a small country town that's safe and easy to get to.
These 15 people a year that are selling, why?
I guess it's interesting. I was made aware of recently of a statistic, the Regional Movers Index it's called, which was something that was done out of Sydney, I think, during COVID to look at the movement of people from regional areas to capital cities. And Gingin, the last time they did that statistic, I think it was September last year, Gingin was actually 4th in Australia for the Regional Movers Index, which is basically the comparison.
Is that a good thing or a bad thing?
It's a good thing because it's the comparison of people moving into the area as opposed to moving away from the area to the city. So I think the figure was about 60%. So there's, the way I understand it, you're looking at for every 10 people moving out of Gingin to Perth, there's 16 moving into Gingin.
Yeah.
So it's actually growing, and regional towns historically have always suffered from a decline in population.
Brain drain.
Yeah, you get farming communities that the farms are getting bigger and fewer farmers, and the kids are moving to the city for work and more opportunities, whereas now we're finding it going the other way, and that's been a trend since COVID, where people are actually getting out of the city and living in some of these regional areas which are not too far away, still got the convenience, but not crowded in as on tiny blocks.
I think it's absolutely necessary because there's so many of these towns that are only a couple of thousand people max that are precariously sitting there based on their demographics and age groups, and they need an injection of young people.
Yeah.
And I guess there's one thing that these rising prices does is it pushes young people to think about that quieter town out there simply because of a price point, and that's really the basis of the future of Gingin, isn't it?
That's right. And if you look at the ABS stats on population, Gingin's average age is about 40, which is not far off the WA state average, whereas a lot of country towns and even some of the coastal towns within Gingin, your average age is probably 50 to 60, although that's changing now as well. A lot more young people moving to those coastal towns. But the opportunities there now are a lot different to... I grew up in Gingin. There was only one school to choose from. I went to boarding school in Perth for 11 and 12, and now there's buses that go to lots of different places, the private schools, public schools in the outer suburbs of Perth. And you've got more shopping facilities. Ellenbrook's half an hour away.
It's a game changer.
Yeah, so it is a very different environment to what it was previously.
We've just seen the overall stock of property in the area go up by a quarter in the town. Is there capacity, do you think? Is there demand for more? Is there, an opportunity for developers to come in and provide another 150 lots? And would they be bought, do you think?
Yeah, just looking at what's happened with this development we've just finished, it was just really gaining momentum, and we've still got a lot of people on a wait list looking for land. And it's probably a virtue of the shortage of land in the metro area that's made people look further out, as well as that lifestyle choice. But there's definitely demand there for the next few years, I would say, for the growth of the town. And it's really getting to that point where there's now the population is just getting to that volume where you can justify having more services in the town, and it feeds off itself.
Bit of a critical mass.
That's exactly right.
So Gingin's open for business is what you're saying?
Yeah, exactly. Yep.
There it is, a call out to the small and medium developers out there. Have a look at Gingin. There's clearly demand, 107 lots being sold, an increase of population in the space of a quarter, and in the space of a couple of years is not a small thing, and it definitely shows that people like the price point. They're not too bothered by the proximity. It's convenient enough, and therefore, if you can make it work financially, there's a couple of blocks out there in the area that possibly someone could do something productive with.
Yeah, absolutely.
Before we go, Craig, I wanted to touch on Lancelin. You guys have got an office out there as well. We're probably not going to speak specifically to it with its own episode. There's a bloody big development in South Lancelin. It has been going for a few years. It's owned by the Chinese these days. What's happening there?
I've been quite surprised by the uptake of the land there in Lancelin South. It's a pretty big project overall. I think there's about 1,000 lots that are already under contract there. And the first two stages are titled now, and there's houses been built there. They're going full steam ahead with developing the next 4 or 5 stages. And a little bit different picture there. A lot of those blocks are being bought by Eastern States investors, looking at the price point as well, and being in a coastal area not far out of Perth. They're looking at the opportunity probably for long-term growth, and that'll end up being a whole community of itself with new school, shops, industrial centre. So that will really change the face of Lancelin, which is another little coastal town which hasn't really changed much in 40 or 50 years.
Yeah, wow. I remember going up there a number of times for a holiday, and it's clearly a town that historically a lot of fisheries, crayfishing, lifestyle, very windy place, so a lot of windsurfers out there enjoying a weekend. But I think, that's a huge increase in population in lots in the area that I would have thought would have been better achieved through infill, to be frank.
It's going to be interesting to see how it pans out, because it is a small town, and Lancelin's a bit different demographic, as you mentioned. A lot of holiday houses in Lancelin, so about 60 to 70% of the houses are absentee owners. So they're short-term rentals, they're holiday houses or long-term rentals. And there's fairly limited employment in the area at the moment, but that is changing. A lot of agriculture, a lot of fishing, as you say, is very popular. But it needs an industrial base, I think, to support that planned population growth. So they really need to crack on and get some of that industrial development happening if they want to have actual houses built on those lots.
Oh, it's jobs, isn't it? End of the day.
Yeah, people aren't going to buy houses there just as holiday houses if the town's empty.
Craig Hyne from Country Values, thanks so much for coming in, mate. I really appreciate the conversation about Gingin. I think it's so insightful to hear, again, as a yardstick, what's going on in a town like that, and the difference one land development designed and well marketed can have on the future of a town so small.
Yeah, great. Really interesting to look forward to the future in Gingin. I've lived there most of my life, and a few people don't want it to change, but I think it's changing for the better.
Change is good most of the time, I think. Thanks, mate.
Good on you.
Thank you for listening to another episode of the Perth Property Show. If you've only just joined the conversation, you can catch up by heading over to our website, perthpropertyshow.com.au, subscribing to the podcast, or joining our Facebook page. Don't forget to tune in next Monday at 7 a.m. for more expert insights, local analysis, and suburb spotlights. Happy hunting!